Yorganis you guys and Errol Spence is set for a major unification fight here early in 2022. But is Bud Crawford the odd man out? Let's discuss. What's going on, boxing and YouTube world? I am that dude named Dave, and you know what? I am back once again with the Boxing Now podcast. I told you we're going to try to do this every day here. Well, we're going to try every day. I don't know how long I can keep this pace up, but you know what, though? It's a new year, and we're trying to get this going here. But before we get started here, let's do some house cleaning. I need that HBO special. And what is that? That's the help a brother out. So I need everybody to click on like, subscribe, and click on that bell notification below. You know why? Let's just be honest. I'm going to say it again until it's no longer happening. I am a struggle streamer. We got to be real. There's tons of struggle streamers out here on YouTube, but I'm going to own that I am struggle streaming out here. So help me get that YouTube algorithm and we can get this boxing show going here. So let's go. So today's topic is Terence Crawford the odd man out? Now, I know it's January 2022. There's so many possibilities here, but let me talk about this and let's get into it and let me know what you guys think after we get to the end of the show here. So let's break down the details here. Errol Spence Jr. Everybody knows that I'm one of Errol Spence's biggest fans since I met him as a prospect. He is 27-0 with 21 knockouts. He is the current WBC IBF welterweight champion of the world. Okay, he is considered the top man at welterweight. Now we know that people consider Bud as top pound for pound, but you know, Errol Spence has been at welterweight his entire career. He is beating far better welterweights his entire time at welterweight compared to Bud Crawford being here for a couple of years. So arguably we can say that Errol Spence is the top guy at 147, and he has a unification set for March or April against Yorganis Ugas, who is the current WBO champ, who has a record of 27-4 with 12 KOs. Now, Ugas is coming off his biggest fight of the year, beating Manny Pacquiao, the Great. Let's just be honest, former 8 division champion Manny Pacquiao in a 12-round spirited, decision, basically. And let me be honest here, people have been shortchanging Ugas. I was the first one. I have not seen any other boxing podcast. If so, I missed those episodes and I apologize. I was the first one to say that Yorganis Ugas is a top 5 welterweight. I was the first person, we go through old podcasts last year, that said that he beat Sean Porter. And I have said many times, I'm the biggest Sean Porter fan. And I was there in attendance when Bud Crawford knocked out Terence Crawford in November at the Mandalay Bay. I'll talk about that in a second here. I am a huge Sean Porter fan. And I watch, once again, I'm going to say this, people, we need to watch fights with the commentators off. Because depending on the situation, if you have a house fighter, like, for instance, you have PBC with Showtime, or, the Zone Fighters, how Sergio Mora, and he's one of the worst commentators in the game. We need to do a show on Sergio Mora. Oh, my God, former fighters who can't commentate. I respect the fact that he's doing his thing, but, man, he needs a lot of work. But we see the house fighters, they show the love and support for those guys on the TV telecast. So what do? Turn the volume off. I do that a lot of times. And you know what I did, people? I watched that Sean Porter fight, and Sean Porter lost. There was, like I mentioned before in a previous episode, how Isaac Cruz won by losing. You guys had the same thing too. He won by using. Now, he was feared and no one didn't want to mess with him in the welterweight division, but everybody knows that you would have to go through him eventually because he was going to beat all the other guys who are lower tier, and he was going to get a shot again. And what happened? He got a shot. And here's one thing I want to state on the record. I said last year on this time, that you guys would fight Spence with or without that belt. I have been saying that Errol Spence and Yorganis Ugas would have been fighting last year. Only reason why that fight didn't happen because Errol Spence was waiting out for the Manny Pacquiao fight because he wanted the actual title. But there was actually discussions in place where him and you guys were fighting because Manny Pacquiao was up and down. He hadn't fought in several years. So it got to the point where that they were going to do the you guys fight And then, of course, Manny Pacquiao got mad because they stripped his title, and there was so much all drama that was going on. But basically, what was going to happen was the WBA was stripping Manny Pacquiao. It was going to make you guys the full-time title holder since the fact that he ain't fought in a couple years. But the WBA didn't follow the rules. Manny said he didn't receive any information, no written notification, no telephone calls. So that's the reason why we had the big blow up that happened. But eventually, though, Errol Spence was going to fight Manny Pacquiao. Errol Spence hurt his eye. Then you guys fought Manny Pacquiao, and we saw the result that happened. I know that was a lot there. That was some tongue twisting there. If you guys want me to talk about that in a future show to break down the details and the nerdgasm I got to give you on that, because there's a lot of crap involved in that. But long story, long short, I said last year this fight was going to happen. And here we are. The fight is happening. But now you guys is the official WBA champion. So we're going to have, 3 titleists here, depending on the winner. Hopefully we don't have a draw here, So the winner of this fight is going to have the IBF. It's going to have the WBA and the WBC, with Terence Crawford having the WBO belt out there in the wings here. Now, let me say here that knowing this is going to be a good fight, you guys can win. People, let's not be sleepy because he's not name brand. I love Errol Spence, but in the boxing game, anybody can lose. And I think that you guys has a good chance of rocking the cherry card here. He can make a major upset that can throw everything in there. Am I rooting for Spence and think he's the favorite? Oh yes. Let's just be honest here. Spence is the favorite. Okay, but do I think you guys can win? Oh yes. It's not even out of the question here. Not even out of the ordinary. So let's move on to Terence Crawford now. Terence Crawford is 38-0, 29 knockouts. Let me be honest. I was at the Mandalay Bay in November. I witnessed him knock out Shawn Porter. Of course, a little controversy because his dad stopped the fight, a little bit stuff. He retired the fight. Then he didn't give his best count. But I saw firsthand a killer in person because I stay at the Delano. If anything knows about Vegas, the Delano is the sister property connected to Mandalay Bay. And if you ever go to a fight, and if you ever go to Vegas and the fight's going to be at the Mandalay Bay, I suggest everybody book your ticket and go. There's not a bad seat at the Mandalay Bay, and there's good hotel prices at the Mandalay Bay or at the Delano, which is their 5-star resort. Here's the thing, though. If there's a fight at the Mandalay Bay, the fighters will stay at the Delano because that is the 5-star resort place, unless they want to stay somewhere else, basically. But they will be at the Delano. I met Terence Crawford twice the first day I stepped into town at the Delano. And just seeing him with his team walking around, seeing him in his energy, seeing him Thursday, the day before the weigh-in. Of course, he was cranky, trying to keep the weight off so he can. I will say it again, and I have people that can co-sign it. I said that Shawn Porter would be knocked out by Bud Crawford just by talking to him, meeting him those 2 times that same day. And I say, you know what, though? We can talk about boxing all day long. We can watch it on TV, but it's a different ball game when you go to the fights and you meet the fighters the day or 2 days before, and you see the energy and you see the work that they put in. And seeing that in place put in me, I say, you know what, though? I love Shawn Porter. He doesn't have a chance. So let's fast forward now. We got you guys and Spence fighting, but where does that leave Bud Crawford? I said he's on the outside. He's the odd man out. And unfortunately, he is. Because who is he fighting right now? He is currently a free agent. Now, I know he just had this fight. He got time to schedule another fight. But what are his options right now? Let's go over those options. Now, as him as a free agent, does he go to Matchroom DAZN? No. They had not even given him an offer. You know why? Because they don't have anybody of substance or stable at welterweight or 154 outside of Brian Castano, who I said in my previous episode that I hope you guys check out here, that he's fighting Jermell Charlo for the undisputed junior middleweight title champions of the world. So I've already gone to record, early prediction saying that Brian Castano is going to win that fight. So if Brian Castano wins that fight, he comes to the zone, that would be an option for Errol Spence, but that's only one fighter. Do you sign an entire contract or, multiple fight deal over one guy? No. And even the zone's recognizing that at Matchroom with Eddie Hearn. So, they may do a one-off, but they're not rolling out the Brinks truck and they always overpay. So that's one outlet that's out. So what do we have next now? We have Golden Boy. Same thing. They're on the zone. Golden Boy does not have any welterweights or junior middleweights to supply Terence Crawford for a healthy amount of fights for a sustained period of time for a couple of years if you're going to sign a contract. A one-off, if you want to fight Virgil Ortiz, that's one thing. But to do a long-term deal or to set yourself up for major fights, not happening there. And you don't hear Oscar, as much as we know Oscar likes to talk and scream. Do we see him talking about Bud Crawford? No. So let's move to Bob Arum, his former promoter at ESPN. Now, let's just be honest here. It was a bad mistake career-wise for Bud Crawford to re-sign with Top Rank. Now, I get why he re-signed back. I was like, with 2018, 2017, I may have the exact number when that contract was signed, but around that time period, it made no sense outside for the high guarantees that ESPN and Top Rank was going to give Bud Crawford minimum for every fight. So, of course, for Bud, he's a legend at the bank, I bet. ESPN took care of him. Top Rank took care of him. The problem, though, is that as great as Bud Crawford is, it has never materialized to crossover or pop success. He is not a pay-per-view star. And that is the problem that we have with Bud Crawford and Errol Spence not happening. Bud Crawford has received guaranteed minimum from ESPN. So naturally, being the champion that is, 3-division champion, former and the first undisputed 140-pound champion, and a current welterweight champion, and is considered pound for pound either 1 or 2, he's going to want not only that minimum payday, he's going to want more because of who he's fighting. But the problem, though, you have here is that on Errol Spence on the other side, he has sold out venues that are bigger than what Crawford's done. Now, I said, though, the place was packed out the Mandalay Bay, and his whole hometown traveled. I mean, even though it was in Vegas and Sean Porter is from Vegas, there was not a Vegas fan in the house. It was all Bud Crawford. But let's be honest about Errol Spence, though. He goes to California and Staples and basically does sellouts there. He's done Texas. I mean, he is tight with Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is in the Errol Spence business when it comes to fights. They want to do more fights in Dallas. That is a fact. You see, go to YouTube and pull up clips to look up Jerry Jones with Errol Spence. Texas boys, he rocks with them. He sees another form of income. Errol Spence makes money. Then on top of that, too, he may not be the huge pay-per-view star, but let's just call a spade a spade. He's done over 300,000 pay-per-view buys on 300,000 pay-per-view buys on multiple fights. Terence Crawford, on the other hand, has done over 100,000. And this last fight here that I actually went to was on ESPN Plus, which is not on him, but no one bought it though. Still, of course, it wasn't on terrestrial pay-per-view. People can go on their TV. It was on an app, and you either had to cast it or stream it. But still, though, 100,000 under 100,000 bought the fight. It was better going to the fight than ordering it. So I want to bring this article up here from Bad Left Hook here because we have the PBC on the record here making a comment about about Bud Crawford here. So let me pull that up here when I get this here. Let's do this here. All righty. PBC executive Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. hasn't happened because the money isn't there. Crawford hasn't been built as a pay-per-view star. Tim Smith with the PBC. Now he's come on the record saying that I'm not involved in the negotiations, but he is stating something here that is true, that Crawford is not a pay-per-view star. But let me get to the point of the quote, and then I want to get what you guys think about it here. So let's scroll down here. And here's what he says here. I'm going to highlight it here so people can see it on the screen here. Economics. And you don't really want to insult a guy like Terence Crawford, who's a tremendous talent. And I'm not taking away anything from his talent, but he hasn't built into a pay-per-view star. I'm not saying that to throw shade at the guy, but you got to go on his track record and what he's done in the pay-per-view fights he's been involved in. It's not my job to tell anybody how to make him a pay-per-view star. We have enough work on our hands dealing with trying to make our own guys into pay-per-view stars, but he hasn't been built. Let me add here as well. He says, trust me, if there is money in him fighting Errol Spence where he can get what he wants and Errol can get what he wants, that fight would get made. You don't want to insult the guy and make him an offer that's insulting. Nobody wants to do that. He's a proud champion, and you don't want to do that to him. But from a business standpoint, it's a fight that might excite fans, and all these people are out there yelling about pay-per-view. They're not buying it anyway. They're going to plop down any money to, they're going to plop down any money to make it successful. They're going to steal the fight. The numbers won't be enough to get what he wants. I don't know what the numbers is, but I would think that that number will be very high. I'm not involved in those talks, but just looking at the sport historically, I don't think he should be insulted. You know what? I'm going to end this video here with this quote here. But let's respect the PBC for coming out publicly here with this here. We know Errol Spence is not scared of Bud Crawford. I want to be honest here. There is not one fighter that is scared of anybody here. These are grown men that's fighting in the same division. They want to be great, and they're trying to get into the Hall of Fame, or are in the Hall of Fame and trying to solidify their greatness and legacy. They want to be attached to the names of the greats of this sport. They're not scared. But let's just be honest here. Terence Crawford's been at ESPN. ESPN's made a heavy investment in boxing since they came back in when Top Rank left HBO to come over. All right. ESPN was hemorrhaging money from their contracts with football and other sports, things of that nature. And if you look at the numbers, they are investing less into boxing, but are making a killing off of it. That's why you saw them got back into the boxing business with their content here. Okay. And so that's what allowed for them to overpay Terence Crawford. But the problem that we have here is we go on pay-per-view. These guys are going to want a set minimum. And the PBC is saying, hey, look, we do not want to disrespect and insult Terence Bud Crawford. If we give him a deal right now, he's going to be mad. Has we seen any promoter recently do something like that? We always hear, or they're scared, or like in a recent article I said about Oscar De La Hoya saying that they sent information to Leonard Elby and the PBC and then they didn't want it, but Leonard Elby said they ain't got a deal. We see people capping all the time, but at least in this situation here, we are seeing that the PBC is saying, hey, look, we don't want to disrespect Bud Crawford. What he's asking for in the money, we just do not want to insult him. So should Bud tailor his demands and he's asked for a minimum, but then there's a bigger jackpot for the winner? Is Errol Spence going to do that, knowing that he doesn't need to do that because he is a star? There are so many things here. Here's what I should do here. Let's have another discussion about Bud Crawford. I know we're talking about you guys and Spence. That fight's coming up, and then we said it is Bud the odd man out. Technically, right now, he could be. So before it ended, what's his fight that he could have next? I think that more than likely he does a one-off deal with back to ESPN Top Rank, and he goes over to Scotland to fight Josh Taylor, who's currently, like I said, the undisputed junior welterweight champion. Now, the fact that ESPN and Top Rank wants to do this fight so bad is two things. A, it's going to make a gang of money for them. They've already figured this out. They look at the numbers, and even though Crawford is not a pay-per-view star, they know that with Taylor and the scenario they're going to set it up, it can make a gang of money. And two, they must think if this fight's going to happen in Scotland, there's a possibility that he can beat Bud and make Bud the man, and make Josh the man and catapult his career. They are very high on him and think that he has a chance. So I think that is Bud's only chance right now. Jermell Charlo, like I said in the last video, he's in an undisputed fight here with Brian Castano. And after that fight, whoever wins is going to have to fight a mandatory next, unless Bud just says, I'm using my WBO title to force a mandatory. But we're not hearing none of these things here. We're not hearing him force a mandatory. We're not hearing him going to another division. We're hearing all the top guys have scheduled fights, and Bud just knocked out Sean Porter and has nothing in place. So right now, Bud is the odd man out. But I could be wrong. What do you guys think, boxing fans? Is Bud the odd man out? And should Bud stick in his laurels and ask for more money, even though that financially and business-wise, he hasn't put in the work like Errol Spence? What do you guys think? Let's talk next time. I'm that dude named Dave.